Strap in, gang, there's a new Necron Overlord that's just been revealed, and my god, is this a model with a lot going on. In November of 2021, there was a little cheeky tease of some sort of Necron thing, and a mere near 2 years later, which has got to be some sort of record, right? Is that now the longest gap between rumour engine and model reveal that we've had? I feel like it's got to be up there. It's got to be close at the very least. We now have this guy right here. This is a new Necron Overlord, and he is stepping into or out of phase space, depending on what you go for in your own personal narrative. And oh, I was not kidding when I said there was a lot going on with this. So, I'm kind of all over the place when it comes to this model. I'm really all over the place with it because it's a really, really cool idea. And I think the idea has been executed really well. But as someone who is something of a connoisseur when it comes to kind of visually complicated models, I mean, I know I'm a massive hypocrite. I complain about Games Workshop making their models super busy, and then I kit bash horrific monstrosities that have absolutely no focal point, and there's just too much going on to really pass what you're seeing. I'm aware, right? The thing is, I chose to make them like that. I didn't buy them like that. So it's still hypocritical, but that's my excuse, and you're just going to have to deal with it. This is one of those things where your at-a-glance impression is not enough to go off in terms of working out what this thing is. Admittedly, yes, they have done a good job of really clearly indicating that it is an Overlord. You've got a massive old bladed staff right there. There are still the telltale signs when it comes to the body itself, very much in the style of the newer Overlords, obviously, or the newer Necrons as a whole. You've got that kind of carapace with the little like horn things sticking up behind the head. The head is very, clearly identifiably a high-ranking Necron head. So, at a glance, you do get, the salient points fairly quickly. But there's also a lot of, visual noise, which is part of, the effect. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it does make that initial glance, there's just so much to try and focus on, Now, I'm not necessarily suggesting that that's a really bad thing. I think it's something that when you're going for this effect is probably kind of hard to avoid. You want there to be enough happening to kind of mask the visual trickery you're pulling. So the fact that the weapon itself, the haft part of it is just gone, it's just disappeared, but you can still see the blade at either end because you have that kind of swirling phase space effect. Same thing with the legs. Most of one of the legs is missing, and a chunk of the other leg is. The arms as well, you can see that the arm holding, probably Resurrection Orb, I'm guessing. It's been a while since I've looked at a Necron Codex. It does look like one of those arms is again phasing in or out, so it's a really cool effect, and they've done it in a really cool way. There are the cues there where you can see by context cues what's happening with parts of the model by looking at other parts. So if you look at the that carapace over the shoulder, you can see that it's starting to kind of drift away into this kind of cube-like smoky substance. As soon as you see that and then look at the rest of it, you know full well that the rest of it is doing the same thing. Those sections that are missing, it's because they have shifted out of this particular reality, if you will. It's a really, really cool effect, and I do like it a lot. The thing is, I think the crossed arms pose, whilst imposing, is also... it creates this kind of weird, central core to it that, I don't know, it sort of looks very in motion and very not dynamically pleasing at the same time. It feels very, very I don't know, there's something just artificially pose-like about it, which that's a terrible way to explain it, but for some reason, I'm looking at it and I really want to see more movement, there is a step into or a step out of. I'd love to see the arms kind of a bit wider, maybe seeing parts of the chest move. I think it's a really cool idea and the execution is good, but there's something about it that doesn't look like he's actually going anywhere. It just looks a little bit static at the same time, which is a weird thing of, clearly, this guy is either going somewhere or is arriving from somewhere because he is forming into or disappearing from reality as we look at him. On the other hand, the arms suggest complete stillness, which it's a weird contrast to have, at least to me. You know, as always, completely subjective, but that's just what my initial thought was. It's like, oh, that's a really cool effect. Oh, he's kind of just looks like he's sort of standing there, really. And that's, I mean, it could be a little bit cooler if he was doing a bit more, but then again, would that make it way too complicated? Would that just make it harder to pull the effect off, or would that make the model even busier than it already is, given that it is kind of busy? I don't know. Now, we have these back and side shots, and I actually hadn't looked at these yet, so all that trickery you get from the front becomes a bit more obvious when you see it from the side, but then it also adds some really cool context when you then sort of turn the model around. I love the carapace. I love that kind of ball of energy that's in the center of it that is, you know, mimicking this substance that's going around him, this kind of rift thing that is forming. I really like that. That's really nicely done. Little things like having that kind of solitary cube where the other horn would be, it looks fantastic. I actually think the rear view of this model is really, really nice. It's really well done. Weirdly, I feel like the side view does like less for the legs than the front or rear one does, just because they are, I don't know, there's a lot of like streaming energy and stuff coming off other parts of the body as it's being like moved in or out of phase space or whatever, but the legs don't have as much of that effect going on. Then again, I've already said it's really busy. I've already said it's a pretty busy model. So if they did do a bunch of stuff coming off the legs as well, that would be too much. I think that would be too much. I don't think it's fair to criticise that, actually, because I think if they had gone with like having a bunch more stuff streaming off the legs, that would just lead to it being like a visual mess. And whilst there is a lot going on, whilst it is pretty busy, I don't think it's fair to call this like a visual mess. I think it's actually like controlled. Yeah, the more I look at that like rear view, that's just really neat. It's just really neat. Can also see more of the carapace has gone as well from that view. Like there's chunks missing out of it. You can see it's separated slightly on one side. Like, oh man, that's really clever. That's really, really cool. I also hadn't fully picked up on the gaps in like the flow of this stuff either until we had that rear view there. And you know what? Now looking at it from the front, I kind of have more of a, I guess like a deeper appreciation for it now, if anything. And now that I've noticed those gaps, I like the gaps. I like the gaps in the kind of flow of the energy and stuff. Bit of a roller coaster that. I wasn't really sure where I was landing on whether I really liked this or really didn't like it or really any of that, to be honest. So yeah, I think overall, final verdict, pretty nice. The question is, what do you think? Let me know in the comments down below. In the meantime, feel free to click all the things, literally everything. Don't do that. There's like Patreon stuff, there's YouTube member stuff. There'll be another video for you guys on Thursday, another exclusive one for you, so look out for that. Usual array of affiliate links in the description down below. Use all of those. It's great. It really helps. You get things, I get something for sending that way. You don't have to, like, it's just stuff that you want, and that's it. Easy. Simple transaction, that one. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you for the next one.